Joseph Conrad, in his Tales of Unrest, wrote, "Fear is always with us. A man can destroy everything within himself, love and hate and belief, even doubt, but as long as he clings to life, he cannot destroy fear that pervades his being, that tinges his thoughts, that lurks in his heart, that watches on his lips the struggles of his last breath. But in fact, I have seen people die without fear. I am aware of people who have been able to place their fear in their pocket, as it were, to control their fear while they fly dangerous missions into space, while they perform delicate brain operations, while they listen to the frightening proposals of their children and grandchildren. We've all felt the anxiety of social judgment, the anxiety of personal uncertainty, the anxiety of financial loss, of parental and grandparent embarrassment, of the concealed generational ignorance in a time of global technology. The scriptures I read about Moses showed that he was in a similar spot of panic. Fear of social rejection, fear of his own inadequacy, fear of being left high and dry, fear of what fate and the future would be there for him. And alongside of that, I took the gospel of Jesus assuring the disciples that in the face of their chaos, they could find courage. That even though they are full of fear in the present, there was a strength to face the future. That even though they feared the loss of everything, there was the possibility of a new identity about to happen for them. We could name 100 fears that open around us and in us every day. We could name another 100 and more anxieties that we have as our intimate companions every day. There are 4 that walk into my room every day, and I think everybody knows them. First of all, there is that anxiety that everybody knows of discovering how empty your life can be. If you look at the terrain around Lake Eyre where that helicopter crashed, sadly bringing men's lives to an end the other day, there's the emptiness. If you look at the photographs on your television screen of Libya, the desert of emptiness. The desert described in that book, The English Patient. Nobody wants to be stranded in such deserts. But somehow we are profoundly fascinated because they seem to be symbols of our one of our greatest anxieties. Paul Tillich, the theologian, called it the anxiety of emptiness and meaninglessness. Life. Life, our life. How do we avoid this constant existential threat that cuts across our self-worth, the very core of our being, and tells us that somewhere there is emptiness. Anxiety of emptiness. Everybody knows something of that other anxiety, the anxiety of Moses, the anxiety of insufficiency, of not being equal to the task, of a self without the strength needed for the task. James Hollis, in his book, Finding Meaning in the Second Half of Life, wrote of the wound of insufficiency. Many, as they feel they may not have what it takes, or may fall short one way or another, may then double up the insufficiency by then making faulty choices, by running heavy on negative emotions, and by their self-sabotaging behaviour. We know that anxiety, the anxiety of insufficiency. Everybody knows the third anxiety, the anxiety of what may be ahead, of what will be our fate or our future. Dr. Gordon Livingston said, we are all desperate for an explanation for our existence, eager for some reassurance that there is a guiding purpose behind our daily struggles. In our series of 40 years of St. Michael's, a couple of Sundays ago we were deeply affected by the oncology specialist, Ranjana Srivastava. She wrote the book, remember? Tell Me the Truth. What was the truth her patients craved? What is going to happen to me? How will the end come? What kind of death am I going to die? And do you remember? Her answer was not in the words she spoke, but in her presence, the strength of her presence. Reflecting, if you like, the very words of the scriptures today, the gentle hope that surrounded her as she spoke. Everybody knows the fourth anxiety. You see it on television every night. You see it in the newspaper reports of our parliaments every day. It is the anxiety of what I call a lesser humanity. When humanity, as Ben Ockery says, could be up there, we so often slip and we're down here, where we lose our best humanity. We lose our compassion. We deny our altruism and our generosity, and we see the ugliness of a diminished humanity. Ben Ockery again in his poem wrote, "We are better than that. We are greater than our despair. The negative aspects of our humanity are not the most real and authentic. The most authentic thing about us," he says, "is our capacity to create, to overcome, to endure, to transform, to love, and to be greater than our suffering. We are best defined," he said, "by the mystery that we are still here. And we can still rise upwards, still create better civilizations." These four anxieties I put to you today, anxieties and fears, can block your potential. Emptiness, insufficiency, our future, and our inhumanity or lesser humanity, a humanity that's sold out to the best. So before I turn to how and where you can regather your potential, I'd like to just take one little story, a children's tale, the three little pigs being threatened by the wolf outside, the huge external anxiety threatening to invade and gobble them up. Were they scared out of their wits by all the huffing and puffing, by the verbal threats? Whatever. Notice the survival of the third little pig depended upon strong walls, a well-planned strategy, a good sense of his own sufficiency, and a firm focus on his survival into a different future where the big bad wolf would no longer be a threat. That's the fairy tale. What do the psychologists say in 2011? Facing stress, what do you need? Good strengths, good coping strategies, a strong sense of self, a belief in the future. Go back to Three Little Pigs, and there it is. So let me now go further, because already you may be here today wondering why I focus on potential, when we know very well the anxieties that crowd out our potential, that block our potential. Many of you here will say to me, look, we've climbed the ladder of our career, that's over. We've come up the rungs of success, that's over. We've moved through various critical milestones, over. We've contributed to the good cause, that's over. We've proven our prowess, over. So what potential? What are you talking about? Where is the potential that we need to be concerned about? Rather than writing off the goal of potential, join the younger ones here and see what potential really surpasses our career goals, our money making, our being on the top perch or whatever, all of that. And let's see, what does the potential now mean for all of us? It means this, first of all. It means to redefine who we will be and the kind of world we will create. What kind of person? Redefine the person you'll be. Moses said, or his God said, I will be there whom I there shall be. An ongoing presence with great strength and courage. Do you know, my eye caught Bruce Elder's review of Nancy Knudsen's book in yesterday's paper. The title of her book, the imagery of the book, the mystery of it, Shooting Stars and Flying Fish. I couldn't help but read it. Nancy Knudsen, Audi driver, plush Sydney suburb, successful businesswoman with a trainer, husband Ted, an architect, a wealthy racing sailor, bags of money. They could do what most of us could never really do, even in our dreams. What did they do? They decided to trade in their busy lives and sail around the world, shooting stars and flying fish. Talks of their 5 years journey round the world, a life-changing journey. I quote Bruce Elder's review. Of poverty in Eritrea, the husband Ted said, they have nothing, these people in Eritrea, but you know, they really have everything in the world that is really important. And that's a big statement from a former Porsche driver, said Bruce Elder. So husband and wife were changed by their expensive 5-year holiday. The question remains, will the poverty-stricken Eritreans be changed? Or will we close off that anxiety of our lost and lesser humanity and go on listening, hypnotised, in fact, mesmerised by the Australian spate of economists and politicians ever ready to tell us how much worse we're going to be than we were last year? It's extraordinary when you think of it. Redefine who you're going to be and what is really important. The second thing I'd like to say, in the face of the anxiety of our emptiness and insufficiency, there is something we can do even in face of that. We can tap into substitute sources of well-being and positive life pursuits. I draw an unexpected analogy. For years, the deserts of Libya were just deserts of sand. Some here know them well because you were the rats of Tobruk, right there in wartime Libya. For generations, nobody realized that underneath that desert of sand, there were the wells of oil. Our own lives could tell a similar story. Long before the time of Sigmund Freud, no one realized that we were largely driven by our unconscious. What is this unconscious? Nobody even thought about it. We were there. There we were, rational, so we thought, rational human beings consciously making our choices, until along came Freud and his ilk, and he said, it's the unconscious impulse. It's the unconscious part of your mind that is the powerful part. A great deal of attention, of course, has been focused on the unconscious impulses of destructiveness and violence and rage and ugliness. And we've been slow to come alive to what's been discovered in recent times, that the unconscious mind also has a reservoir of goodness and tenderness and joy and creativity. The best in the human spirit can also be repressed in the unconscious. But when it is released, we become different people. That is the potential that we're looking for. Third thing, we look for those things that are greater than our anxieties, that lift the human spirit, that elevate us into a larger way of being. Friedrich Nietzsche, that philosopher often called the philosopher of despair, he wrote this: the individual must be consecrated to something higher than himself. He must be free of the terrible anxiety which death and time evoke, for at any moment he may encounter something holy that endlessly outweighs all his struggles and all his distress. Of course, we are being brainwashed at this time to be in the grip of negativity, negative emotions. We can become so much part of these themes that we forget, we repress what is so central to our faith, the elevation of the human mind and the human spirit. If you don't look for that elevation, you're likely to stay on the lower levels of human emotion. Once you start looking for the signs of elevation, you find it. You feel it. You begin to talk it. You open a door to a new existential awareness. An elderly man in George Vaillan's study lived all his life on the lower level, and then he said, it happened. A door opened. I never dreamed my later years would be so stimulating and rewarding. One distinguished art critic, Alexander Nemerov, said, when an artist's life has tumbled into a wreck, he sometimes transcends it. Not by making pictures that tell the world how miserable he is or has been, but by connecting with a drawing strength from artistic currents and themes that are bigger than he is, and let him leave his woes behind. Elevation. We can spend our years analysing the details of our anxiety and contemplating how they all prevent us from being alive and free, how they imprison us. Rather, we might lift our sights to a larger view, an elevation of the human spirit. It helps us rehearse a sense of who we are that is larger than our fears and our anxieties. There's the potential. That's what we're looking for. All of us, surely. Or fourth, we look for the freedom for a freedom from our anxiety. Freedom, if only we could get free. If we are convinced that we are bound and limited by an inevitable anxiety, we are likely to stay right there. But if we can develop an awareness of the legitimacy of seeking freedom from anxiety, then we will begin to rehearse those possibilities, that potential. When I was in Romania several years ago, at the end of the Ceausescu dictatorship, I was asked to meet several days in the week with the youngish, middle-aged people who are forming the nub of the government. They were wanting to pursue how they would now live a different life now that the controls were off. So I introduced them to my paradigm of my Fs. I've spoken about my Fs here before. I now have 17 of them, as some of you know. But at that time, I only had 9. So I gave them my 9 Fs. And then one youngish fellow said, "You've left out the most important F. You've left out the most..." For them it was about preparing for a new way of life after a time of fear and anxiety. So those people of Romania urged me to insert my 8th F. My 8th F was the F of freedom. Learning to be free of that blocking anxiety is surely not easy, but it is an important objective, and that's the potential. So my 4 issues: redefine who you really are in the face of all your anxieties. Tap into the subtle. Number 2, tap into those subtle sources of well-being, those alternative substitutes. Thirdly, look for the things that elevate the human spirit so that you rise above your fears, you're greater than your fears and your anxieties. And 4th, focus on freedom. That's the potential. Through these 4 pathways, of course, we need new energy every day. We need new faith in ourselves. We need new faith in resources that are often hidden from us. We need new faith in the larger view. Many get very anxious when I talk about the new faith. But look again at the biblical story. I will be there whom I there shall be. There it is. He was talking about the drama of a new faith for now and a new faith for the future. And that's our potential. That's our potential too. Would you please stand? Would you pause for the blessing on this important day? May the God you see in all the colors of creation arouse in you a sense of awe and wonder. May the God who is a sacred presence be real to you. May the God who is a source of inspiration and courage keep calling you forward. May your God go with you and bless you today and always.